And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Okay, tonight's weather, not much change out over the Bering Sea. A weak low out over the southwest area there, and a lot of low clouds, fog, areas of rain, scattered showers covering much of the area. Then it clears out as you get to the southwest coast. Stays pretty nice down in this area from Bristol Bay right on up into the Seward Peninsula and eastward into the interior. This area of rain and showers kind of narrowing as it comes eastward, and but holds together enough to keep showers and rain going across Cook Inlet, Manauskas-Susitna Valley, Kenai Peninsula tonight, ending from east to west. And another trough keeps it kind of showery up over the eastern Brooks Ranges, the eastern Arctic coast, and the Panhandle. A lot of moisture here in Canada, poised to move in, starts moving in late tonight over the eastern areas. And by tomorrow, looks like just a solid area of mostly rain and showers, all the way up to about Yakutat, becomes partly to mostly sunny Copper River Basin, and in the interior as this moisture breaks up, isolated and widely scattered thunderstorms here. Western Alaska Range across the southern Kuskokwim Valley, possibly into the northern Bristol Bay area and Aleutian Range, but dry and nice over the interior, all the way up to the Arctic coast. And front starting to form out here over the Bering Sea associated with that persistent low out there. This one taking off to the east and dissipates as this pushes eastward, new low center develops. So rain moving into the eastern Aleutians and eventually into the Pribilofs. Another band of moisture swings up, possible showers for Nunivak Island on Wednesday. Otherwise, the northern half of the state, sunny, warm, all the way up to the Arctic coast. Variably cloudy with scattered isolated showers and thunderstorms over the mountainous terrain here of south central Alaska. This area more of a coming in from the west now as the whole pattern starts to shift from easterly flow back to southwesterly flow, and this is kind of the leading edge of the southwesterly flow there. So that'll bring a chance of showers up to the western Alaska range, but not much reaching Kodiak Island. Taking a look at the coastal water forecast on the south coast of the Panhandle, west to southwest winds 10 to 15 knots. Otherwise, basically west winds or some variation thereof for the central and north coast of 20 to 25 knots. Lynn Canal, small craft advisories south at 25 knots, 20 knot south winds for Stevens Passage, and 15 knots for Clarence Strait. And for the day Wednesday on the south coast here, east to southeast winds 15 knots, south to southeast of 15 for the central coast. West winds 15 to 20 knots on the north coast. Lynn Canal, south winds now down to 15 knots. Light southeast winds for the Stevens Passage, and east at 10 for Clarence Strait. Prince William Sound, west winds 15 knots. North Gulf Coast, west-southwest winds 15 to 25 knots or 20 to 25 knots. Variable at 20 for the Barren Islands. Variable at 10 for Kamishak Bay. Cook Inlet, light southwest breeze at 10 knots. Outlook for Wednesday, Cook Inlet, south to southwest winds at 20 knots, south at 20 for Kamishak Bay, southeast winds 15 knots for the Barren Islands, and southwest 15 for the western North Gulf Coast. Otherwise, for Prince William Sound and the eastern North Gulf Coast, winds will be light and variable, the seas running 2 to 4 feet. Kodiak Island, southwest winds 15 knots. And the Alaska Peninsula here, east-southeast winds at 20 knots on the Pacific side, Bering Sea side variable at 10, and Bristol Bay south winds at 10 knots with 1 foot seas. And then for the day on Wednesday, variable winds at 10 knots on the Pacific side, south to southwesterly breezes at 15 knots for the Pacific side, and that extends right up into Bristol Bay. Kodiak Island, southwest 15 to 20 knots. On Alaska Island tomorrow, variable to southeast winds 10 to 15 knots. Adak and Atka, south winds 15 to 20 knots. And west to southwest winds 10 to 15 knots for the western Aleutians. And for Wednesday, south to southwest winds at 15 knots for the western Aleutians here. Adak and Atka about the same, southwest at 15 knots. And eastern Aleutians, south winds 15 knots with 2 to 5 foot seas. Southwest coast, variable winds at 10 knots. Same thing for the Pribilofs, light variable winds at 10 knots. East at 15 for St. Matthew Island. Northeast at 20 knots there for Norton Sound. Otherwise, St. Lawrence Island, light northeast wind at 10. And for the day on Wednesday, Norton Sound, St. Lawrence Island, northeast at 15 knots, southwest coast, southwest winds at 10 to 15 knots, winds south at 20 knots for St. Paul and St. George, St. Matthew Island, southeast at 15. Eastern Beaufort Sea coast, far eastern end there, brisk wind or small craft advisories tomorrow. East winds 25 knots. Otherwise for the central and east side there, looking at east southeast at 15, turning south at 20 for the western Arctic coast. And the Chukchi Sea here, anywhere from light and variable to south at 10 to 25 knots. And for Wednesday, for the Chukchi Sea, northeast to southeast winds at 10 knots, the western Arctic coast southwest at 25 knots, so small craft advisories there, and southwest winds at 20 knots for the central and eastern Beaufort Sea coast.